arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with his saints to reign. He arose, he arose, hallelujah, Christ arose. Vainly they watched his bed, Jesus my Savior. Vainly they sealed the dead, Jesus my Lord. From the grave he arose, with a mighty triumph on his throne. He arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with his saints to reign. He arose, hallelujah, Christ arose. Death cannot keep his prey, Jesus my Savior. He tore the bars away, Jesus my Lord. From the grave he arose, with a mighty triumph o'er his foe. He arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with his saints to reign. He arose, he arose, he arose, he arose, hallelujah, Christ arose. Please greet each other this morning.
excited about the new Celebrate Recovery at the Nazarene Church in Cle Elum. And Rich and Ellie are heading that up. And we've been there, how many of you had? Three? Three, and we've been there for all three of those and trying to support them and encourage them. And I heard Ellie's testimony last, Friday night, and I really liked that. And I asked her if she was brave enough to come and talk to you people and try to help some folks and get the word out. Every one of us have people in our lives that are dealing with some type of addiction or abuse. We all know somebody. It might be a cousin, it might be an aunt or uncle. In my case, it was a dad. And so I want to talk about, kind of give you, this is the theme of what I'm wanting to go with. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to get it all out, but we're going to do it in a series of services. And these are some of the things, and this is what I was most impressed with when I came to Celebrate Recovery. And I think we've got some too. These are the ones that Rich did. But it covers chemical dependency, gambling addictions, adult children of family dysfunction. That's me. I'm going to give a little talk one of these days. Ellie inspired me. Freedom from anger. You hear that, Art? He's doing really good. Love and relationship addictions. Codependency. Codependent women in a relationship with sexually addicted men. Sexual addiction. Physical, sexual, and emotional abuse for women. Physical, sexual, and emotional abuse in general. Food addictions, eating disorders, and those cover most of the things that folks deal with. When we first met Ellie, we were going to headed to Cle Elum, and she was at that time was living under a bridge at that first exit. You remember, Jackson? And she was holding that sign, "We'll dance for food." She had a little boom box going. She was river dancing out there. It's pretty cool, very creative. So anyway, she's got a great testimony. And this is about Christ. That's what Celebrate Recovery is about. It's about the Christian solution to addictions. And so I wanted to get all of our, Tim and Carrie, who lead our Celebrate Recovery. And these two lead the one in Cle Elum, as I said. So we're going to be doing some of this. And I've asked, Tim has covered, I think, gave his testimony about drug addiction. We're going to do that later again. And then Carrie's going to talk about several of these that pertain more to women than men, maybe, and I could be wrong on some of these. And then Rich is going to talk about the rest of them. So we're gonna fit that in some service sometime. But that's the goal. That what I'm trying to achieve is to get people aware of each and every one of these things. And after pastoring here for 23 years, I'm convinced that 99% of y'all need to be in Celebrate Recovery. So, so really glad to have Ellie today. I hope her pastor doesn't get mad at me and close down the CR by having her come. But we this has blessed our church, and will bless that church, and we want to support it. So give her a warm welcome, Ellie. As I'm not sure if she has a last name, but you want to click that on it. Are we on, Art? I think it'll work. You can put it here or put it here.
What? Oh, this?
Yeah, you want coffee or anything? Now, if you get nervous, just look right into that television. We're broadcast live.
Fine.
Live
I forgot
around the
about
world.
that.
I love you, sister.
Thank you. So, okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Ellie. I am a recovering alcoholic, recovering for about 40 years now. And my story starts out I like to take it all the way back to the beginning, and I really think that where I really got in trouble in life was when I was about 9 years old. I was raised on. I come from three areas. I come from Washington, Montana, and California, and I have roots in all of them. And so it's like, when I go to talk about these things, it's like it's all important. It's all a part of who I am. So I was born in Seattle, and then my stepfather met my mother and met me, and wanted to give me a home and raise me. And so I was being raised by my grandmother and all of that family. So they took me back to Montana. So I spent the next 10 years on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. That's where my roots are. And the thing that probably traumatized me most in my life in the beginning was when I was 9 years old. My dad was an entrepreneur. He had all kinds of, he always had a business going. He always had something, we had a cattle ranch back there. He had a restaurant. He had different things. Well, when I was 9 years old, there was a lot of drinking back there, a lot of craziness, a lot of insanity going on. And my mother was a binge alcoholic. And like I said the other night, I think my parents kind of married more out of convenience than anything, because my dad had really wanted to give me a home and raise me. So my mother, when she would go on her binges, she'd be gone for, who knows, 2 days, 3 days. I don't know, different, you're little, who knows. But when they're gone, and it's very, very important, very traumatic. But the traumatic thing is that my father was always with me and always watched out for me, took care of me forever. Well, one day he decided he'd had enough, and he left her, he left us, he left, he packed up, and away he went. And that was something that it was like, okay. So my mother came in and she says, well, your dad's gone, and you're leaving too. She says, you'll be gone in about a week. I'm sending you back to California. Well, I had an aunt and an uncle that lived in California. She was my godmother. And so the way I went, next thing you know, I'm in the car and I'm making this big trek back to California. And like I said, I was raised on the reservation. Probably the most people I ever was around was about 50, 60 people. I end up in a school with about 300 in one classroom. I've never seen so many people in my life. And I went from the mountains to the ocean, and was happy to get there. I was really, really happy. Loved my aunt and uncle. But the stay was very short, and it was sad because for the first time I felt secure. I felt like I was comfortable. I was at home. It was good. Well, in about 2 months, they decided to come get me, and they brought me back to Washington. And when my dad went home back to Montana to get our stuff, after they got back together, everything was gone, everything. And right down to the rugs in our house. They came in, they took the rugs, they took everything that was imaginable. We lost my animals, my dogs, horses, a lot of things, everything gone. And it wasn't until about, I'm going to say about 10 years ago, once I got back up into this part of the country, that I realized what a traumatic effect that had on my life. I never addressed it, I never anything. And the thing that happened because of that trauma was you just freeze, you go numb. You don't feel anything, you don't have any emotion, there's nothing going on anymore. It's just, you shut down. Amen. And you just sort of go through with whatever, you just sort of go through the motions. And so anyway, we moved to, when he talks about the bridge, he's not too far off. Thought, well, okay. So years later, after a few years later, I was 11 years old, I guess, and my dad bought I want to call it a resort in Cle Elum. It was in South Cle Elum. It was cabins and a store and a store and trailer court and everything. And so he moved us to Cle Elum. And I want you to know, at 11 years old, to me, that was the armpit of the world. I thought I'd died, and I had really gone, I didn't know what had happened. It was like, oh my gosh. nothing. I mean, I was shut off from the world. And mind you, now I am, I'm a world traveler. I've been to California and here and there and everywhere. And it was like, wow. So when I got to Cle Elum, I was in the 8th grade. And it was a brand new school. It was a brand new start. It was a brand new time. And I came in, like I said, I really shut off, really shut off, just sort of going with the motions, whatever. And so I had to fight my way into trying to be accepted there, new school. And the girls didn't really like me a lot. I wasn't. But anyway, I graduated from school there, ended up getting married. And like I said, we're on Riverside Cabins. Well, when I was a sophomore in high school, same thing happened. My mother got sick. We ended up losing Riverside Cabins. They lost it. They closed it down on the way we went. So there's another one, but that's a pattern that just kept kind of happening. So I ended up getting married. Got into a very abusive marriage. A lot of domestic violence, which I didn't take too well because I was, I'd grown up with a lot of violence. I saw a lot of violence. It was whatever, and my message to myself was, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that. So, I think I was 20. I grabbed my kids. I had 2 kids and my dog, and away we went. We got away from him and went to live with my grandma. And so I had never had an opportunity to work. I always worked for my dad, so I never held down a job. So there I was 20 years old, and I thought, I've got to make a living for me and the dog and my kids. And so one thing that I did know how to do is tend bar. So I got a job tending bar, and I kind of escaped into the underworld the way I went. And being in the bar business is not a really good place to be. And so that was when I started picking up the bottle and starting, casual drink. Okay, I mean, you'd be closing and you'd have, maybe a drink. And I could, the first time I was in the bar, and the guy who hired me, he told me I was going to work as a cocktail waitress for a couple of weeks, and then, I'd learn how to be a bartender. Well, carrying a tray of gin, bottle, glasses of gin, geez, I got high. I was just like, wow. I mean, I was so sensitive to alcohol, really sensitive to alcohol. I didn't like it. I didn't think I'd ever drink. I didn't think it would ever happen to me. And so naturally, I didn't think I had a problem, but slowly but surely I got into it. And so the drinking lasted for a few years, and it took me places where I would never want to go again, and thank God today I don't ever have to ever go there again. Amen. But just, emotional, not emotional, but the people, places, and things, it's a life that, it's like a fungus, you just sort of get going and it just rolls you out. Well, my kids and I went through, we went through 10 years of trauma, really, really bad stuff. I believe that, Jesus, there's God, there's Jesus, and your husband is your protector, no matter who your husband is or what he does or whatever, but he is your protector, over the wife. And when I stepped out from underneath that covering, I got into all kinds of problems because my protection really was gone. And I was out there, just really, really having a tough time. When I finally, one of the things that happened to me was in those 8-10 years of the tumultuous stuff that I was going through with the ex-husband, he got FBI following me, detectives, everything. He was really, he was just trying to watch everything that I was doing. And I was really naive. I was really, really, really naive. I went to one attorney. I found an attorney, and he told me to go home and be a really good wife and keep my mouth shut and everything would be fine. No, I don't think that'll work. And then I got another attorney, and she told me to kidnap my kids. Well, okay, that sounded, I could do that. So, so anyway, he had filed for a divorce. He had filed for a divorce, and I didn't even know it because when I left. I didn't, no change of address, no nothing. I mean, I just sort of disappeared into the blue. Well, I didn't know they'd be sending these notices to the house. I mean, you know, your paperwork. So there was a court date, and I didn't even get the court date. So when it come time to go into court and standing up for my kids, and this was back in '69, I think, or '72 or somewhere, before women really had rights at all. No
Right.
protection, nothing.
Right.
And so years later, he got custody of my kids. This was a big thing. He got custody of my kids, and he took them. I thought I had a gentleman's agreement with him, and so I told him to, you know, fine, you've got the house. We had a home, which the school was right in the back, so I figured you could always just throw the kids over the fence and they could go to school, they'd be fine. And so I let him take the kids during the school period, and I wanted them during the weekends and holidays and summer, everything. Oh yeah, fine, that's fine. Well, I didn't go to court. I didn't have any of this in writing, and he sold the house, I think, the day after I left or something. I don't know. But anyway, the house was gone. I come out to get my kids. They're gone. Everything's gone. Again, kids are gone there, and they've moved to, I want to say Timbuktu, but it was really Bellingham. But felt like Timbuktu. So for years, I went through shame, a lot of shame. Not well, I had enough guilt too, but I felt a lot of shame, and and this was something else that just came out recently because I had to send for my divorce. I'd never seen my divorce papers, or really nothing. I never really saw anything. I just found out a couple of years later that I was divorced, and so I went on my merry way. So a few years later, 2 years ago, I had to send for a copy of my divorce papers, and he had my name wrong. He had my birth date wrong. He didn't have an address for me. There was nothing, and I'm thinking, maybe I'm not even divorced. I don't know. But it was like, so for years I carried all of this shame, you know, because this is Washington State. If you lose your child, and my gosh, you must really be a bad person. And like I said, I was 20, 21 years old, didn't know up from down anyway. But I believe that. I carry that in my heart that, yeah, I am a terrible person. I did all the wrong things. So anyway, fast forward, I ended up back in California because California was where I thought it had all gone wrong. And I thought if I could get back to California, I can get my life squared away. I can find the answers. I know that that's what it is. So sure enough, I ended up back in California and down in Orange County. And when I went down there, the idea was, if you're going to drink, then you might as well go to a place where you can where they do it, where they really know how to do it. And so when I got down there, I got a job right away and went to work. So for the next year and a half, I was really hitting more bottom, really going down without even knowing it. So this one night, I had a four-wheel drive pickup, and I had left the bar, and I decided that I was going to go down to the restaurant where everybody hung out. So I got in that pickup and I take off, and I'm going down the road, and I hit I was turned into this restaurant, and I hit a steel pole. Well, I hit it so hard, it knocked the truck back, and I thought, well, the heck was that? So I slam it down into four-wheel drive again, and I ram it, and I hit it again. And I'm like, oh, okay. But over the years, I had built up such a facade. I had such a mask. I had so much anger, and I had so much of this stuff going on in me, all of this turmoil stuff. That was my attitude. My attitude was, you know. Anyway, this guy was following me, him and his family. They were in a Volkswagen, and they were following me. And so he come up behind me, and I'm trying to get out of the truck. And this side was caved in, and so I'm trying to get out on the side over here. finally I kick the door open and I come out and the poor guy's standing there and he goes, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Okay." And I said, "What do you mean, am I okay? How can I possibly be okay? My truck is wrecked." And that was the only thing I could think about, was that truck was wrecked. And anyway, he jumped in the car and left as fast as he could. And so that afternoon, or that morning, or that night, I left the truck there, pieces all over the road, and I went home, and my aunt, another aunt, had come up, and we were talking about this, and I told her, I said, uh, we lost an aunt at 35 years old. She died of acute alcoholism, liver disease, and everything. And at that time, I was 30, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to die in 5 years. I'm done. I am done. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to turn this life of mine around somehow. And I ended up, I told her, I said, I'm going to go back to Seattle and take care of my grandma. And she was going to go to San Diego and get her life together. And we were going to meet in a year and decide where we were. Well, I got as far as Sacramento, and a funny thing happened on my way to Seattle. I was thinking I was doing pretty good. I was probably 2 weeks without drinking because I'd been hanging out at Knott's Berry Farm because you can't drink there. And so anyway, I get to Sacramento and everything, I had left a bunch of stuff in Sacramento. But anyway, week and a half, and the next thing you know, I'm out on a runner again. I'm out drinking, and I remember one day really pouring down rain, and I'm driving this truck, and I'm thinking, "What? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? You just got out with your life, and now you're doing it again." But it really hit me that I couldn't change. I couldn't stop. I was powerless, totally
Amen.
powerless.
Amen.
And so that night, no, that I guess it was the next day because the drinking was the next day. I was still drinking, and I went in and I called this bar where I used to work, and the gal that the bartender answered the phone, and I asked her what was going on because I wanted to go back to California. I wanted to go back down south and just do it. And she told me, she says, I'm not even there. I don't work there anymore. I'm at home. And I said, well, I don't have your home phone number. And she says, not only don't you have my home phone number, she says, but I moved since you left. She says, the day after you quit your job, she says, I got a new job and I was out of there. And she'd been sober for 3 years. So when I got there, when I was talking to her on the phone, she carried the message to me. And she says, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Are you tired of making all these long distance phone calls and getting all of these bills and never knowing who you talked to and what you did? And I'm like, I was so vulnerable. I go, yeah, for the first time I heard it, I was able to say, yeah, you probably am. Didn't even occur to me that I didn't have her phone number, that her and I were talking. God knows how we were talking. But she carried the message of AA and told me to go call them and see what was going on. And so I called them, and they told me, they said, this is the part I liked about AA, really liked about AA. They said, okay, finish your drunk, and when you're done with this drunk, then come on to a meeting. And they told me where to go, and I thought, man, these guys, I like these guys. Nobody's ever told me to do this before. They always want you to quit right now. And so I thought, these guys are going to be okay. And so I found out where a meeting was. And so my first meeting was a woman's meeting. And I walked in there and I saw all of these women looking so well dressed, so well coiffed, so everything, and I thought, I'm in the wrong place because I'm sure none of them have ever had a drink in their life, and they never want to hear anything that I have to say about my life. And within about 15 minutes, there was this one lady that came up to me. She was from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And she come up behind me, and she first thing she said was, she said, I know what kind of a drunk you are. I said, yeah, what? And she says, oh no, what kind of a drinker you are? She says, you're a two-fisted drinker, because I had a cup of coffee in each hand by that time, right? And she was the beginning of my first introduction into AA, and I clung to her like Velcro, and she didn't know what to do with me. And she was in hospital and institution. All she went around to all of the meetings and took meetings in, and so she took me with her, and so that was the beginning for me. It was like I start going into prisons, going into mostly jails, prisons. I like those places, and I went in a lot, did a lot of speaking, and then I got a fantastic sponsor that took me through the steps, and then, but through all of this, God had His hand on my head, and I mean, He was guiding me, directing me, watching me. Everything was flowing, and so He took me into recovery that I have today. And the reason that I'm even doing any of this is the fact that I do have 40 years of pure and simple, good sobriety, wonderful sobriety. It's not. I'm not on a dry drunk. I'm really sober in every area.
Amen.
I'm like it says in the big book. It talks about being joyous, happy, and free. And I have that freedom. I am free from. First thing I had to do is get rid of all my resentments, and Lord knows I had a few. I had to get rid of the stinking thinking, the old way of thinking, the old way of acting, behaving, all of that stuff had to go away. And it went away through walking a program, working a program, and having Jesus Christ in my heart, my soul, my spirit, my mind, my body. And He is the leader of my, we used to have this pastor used to say that Jesus is the hero of his story. And I was thinking about that last night. Jesus Christ is the hero of my story.
Amen.
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 Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, you're better with improv than you are thinking about it. Thank you so much. Awesome.
Well, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Pastor John does this to me. He puts me up on a stage when I don't have any idea what I'm supposed to be talking about and tells me, have at it, Carrie.
Celebrate with Calvary.
I know. What's that?
Microphone, I'm going to change the
Yeah.
levels in it.
So, let's see. How long do you want me to talk for?
Just a few minutes.
Okay, I'm going
Talk
to be...
about the whole thing is the issues that maybe you're dealing with, if you feel comfortable talking
Yeah,
to people about that.
I'll be kind of vague because at some point I'll probably do a testimony, but I had been in a relationship that's jumping many years past the starting point. But I had been in a relationship with an active addict. I was naive to addiction and drugs. I had no idea about it. I didn't know how people hid it. I didn't even know that it was something to hide. I didn't hang out with those kind of people, and so I didn't think anything of it. I became an enabler. I became codependent. I did the yo-yo in that relationship for 8.5 years with children, trying to figure out how do I help this person. I couldn't leave because I was raising kids with them. At least that's what I thought. I had already been married before, so I wasn't willing to go down that road again. I had a history from the storyline prior to that, from childhood, of nothing but toxic men in my life. So here I was in another toxic male relationship, and trying not to become a man-hater, trying to be devoted to my relationship, trying to be wife material. And it finally got to the point that I just said, I can't do this anymore. So my vanity went out the window, my pride went out the window, and I went and got on state assistance. I got on a waiting list, and I got rid of my horses, I got rid of my chickens, I got rid of my dogs, I got rid of my cats. I was a homesteader. I got rid of my miniature donkey, everything that I had that made my life. I was a country girl, and all of it was gone. So you do go through some brokenness when you do these transitions. So I was leaving many things, including the father of two of my, well, at that point, yeah, I was pregnant at the time, due to have a baby within 6 months of the time I had gotten on state waiting list. And I had to make this plan of action, and I chose to leave. I got into state housing. They called me when my daughter Kimber was less than a month old. I was walking into her very first appointment when I got the call. Dad was standing next to me and he didn't know what was going on. He knew that we were separated. We lived in the same house but not together, and I decided I was going to do it. It was a hard decision. I felt broken making the decision, but I had to. It was healthier for my kids. When you're with an active addict, that's a really easy thing to say, but until you've seen and dealt with an active addict, you haven't ridden the roller coaster of life that they put you through. Right. So there are highs, there are lows, and as a codependent, you ride those highs and lows with them. When they're broken, you're broken. When they're hurting, you're trying to fix them. So that's what codependency is I put aside everything that made me feel good, made me feel valuable, and I based my self-esteem, my happiness off of the addict's happiness. I became enthralled with everything that was going on with the addict. My children weren't getting all of me as a mom because all my focus was on the addict. So I moved out. We had several of the yo-yo back and forth, getting back together, breaking up, until I had moved out. And then I said, I'm done with this. I had lived in state housing for about a year at that point, and I had a friend that was talking to me about Celebrate Recovery that she had led. She had talked to me about codependency. We had a very intimate relationship. I believed in God. I didn't know if I was saved. I didn't even know, how do you know if you're saved? I didn't have a close relationship with him, but I did pray often. I didn't know why I was praying. I didn't know if I was getting any answers or anyone was hearing me, but this friend was very, very much in relationship with God. So she kind of sparked that to me. She sparked my interest in Celebrate Recovery, and our relationship grew over a year of her listening to my toxic stories in this relationship going back and forth. So here I was, newly singled again from the same addict, and I decided that I wasn't going to do it anymore. So I started putting posts out on Facebook on local pages saying, where is a Celebrate Recovery? Most people will hear Celebrate Recovery and they automatically assume that means addiction or sobriety from substance abuse. That wasn't my case. And so I had a lot of people saying, oh, well, there's NA. Oh, well, there's AA. I didn't need those. I was an adult child of an alcoholic. I needed the AAC. I needed a different program if I was going to go with those. But I wanted Celebrate Recovery. So I ended up seeking out Al-Anon first before I found a Celebrate Recovery. And Al-Anon is very helpful. It helped me because I was the individual with the addict. So Al-Anon helps the individuals or loved ones of the alcoholics. Well, addict qualified me to be there. And then they talked of a higher power, and I was like, that's kind of vague. I wanted more than that. I didn't want just a higher power. And some of the women in the group were Christians, and they were very comfortable stating their relationship with God. And so I started really just clinging on to those people, and God just convicted my heart. People referred me to, everybody was tagging Tim Kipling, Tim Kipling, Tim Kipling on all these posts I was making. And Pastor John ended up calling me and invited me to come to Celebrate Recovery. And I said, do you have childcare? He said, no. I was like, oh, well, then I'm not coming. Because here I am, a single mom with children. One was fairly young. And I wasn't going to go someplace and have my kids exposed to the things that were probably going to be talked about during those meetings. So he's like, oh, hold on. And he made it happen. He got, Anna was here, and Anna babysat. And I have to give Anna a lot of praise because I have one child that can be very unruly and difficult. He kind of replicates his father in some aspects. But I gained a lot of peace in Celebrate Recovery because I've been in this program here for a year and a half. I came because I needed a support system to help me not go back. I needed a backbone. That's how I saw it. But I wasn't looking at my character defects. I was seeing life from, I've been a victim, I've had all these toxic men in my life, but now at this stage in Celebrate Recovery, I've learned a new part of that story. I was in those relationships. And I took part in those relationships. So I'm on a new phase where I'm seeing, how am I impacting the relationships I'm in? How are my lack of boundaries allowing people to abuse me? So that is codependency. And I'm definitely codependent. I'm growing out of codependency, and I'm trying to learn better boundaries every day. But that's very much a life issue. Everybody has issues with boundaries, whether you're a husband, a wife, a friend, a pastor. So when when Pastor John said that he thinks 99% of us, he wasn't counting himself. I think I think 100% of us all actually would benefit from Celebrate Recovery. It's I gained my salvation sitting where you're sitting. I didn't know what salvation was, and I was sitting there, and the previous leader we had said, "Are you saved?" And I was like, I think so. He's like, "But you don't know?" I was like, "I guess not." And so he went through, and then Tim, another woman's leader that we had, Hugh O'Brien, and I were all right there, and we prayed, and I came to my salvation. And through the lessons of Celebrate Recovery, I've changed my morals. I've had a deep look at my moral compass. I've changed how I do things. I've always been a good person, transparent. I've had integrity, but there were things that weren't Christian. I wasn't following what the Bible says to do, and so I've changed who I am and how I interact, and I can actually repent when I mess up, because I swear sometimes, and that's what Celebrate Recovery is. It's a place that you can come and you can say, I have hurts, I have habits, and I have hang-ups, and you can heal from them. So that's where I'm at.
Well done. All right, Rick. How did you, so you're prepared? I'm just trying to
Not
get
as
this all
prepared as Carrie is.
Oh, I wasn't. He threw that on me just like
Yes,
he's thrown it on you.
2 hours later. So we're eating afterwards. Please stay and eat. We've got food, and stop at 12. And Tim will pray and we'll eat.
My life's longer than 10
I
minutes.
know, you got to condense it.
Hi, my name is Rich, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And I struggle with anger, pride, impatience, and tolerance. You know, this is going to be tough. First off, I'm not a very good speaker, but I'm going to do my very best. Thank God that put me into this position. I was raised in Renton. I was raised by a family of alcoholics. I was blessed with not the dependency on alcohol. Yeah, I did my little parties when I was younger. But I was raised in a family that was abusive. My dad was extremely abusive with my mom. I was too young at the time to realize what was going on. And as time went on, my mom and dad would take us down to grocery shopping on the weekend. They would go to the tavern after buying groceries and leave my brother and I sit in the car for hours without food, without rest. And this went on just about every weekend. As we got older, as I got in high school, I'm condensing this because we only have 10 minutes. As in high school, I realized that this is not the life that I want. So I went in the Army. Did my little party and so on and so forth, yeah. But I never, as I said, I never had a dependency on alcohol or drugs. But I had the anger. And Celebrate Recovery has kind of opened the door to let me realize where my anger is at. Why am I doing this? Anyway, I lost my first wife due to anger, and I almost lost my second wife due to anger. And over a period of time, a gentleman came into my life that introduced me to Celebrate Recovery. And as they call it, recovery, it's not recovered. It's a constant struggle, day in and day out, to deal with your anger, dependencies on whatever it is you're dealing with. And I like to ask how many of these people can relate to any of these subjects that Pastor John had brought up? Or is there somebody in your life that has that problem?
Right.
I know that my dad died of pancreatic cancer due to extreme alcoholism. My mom died of lung cancer, but she was a dried out, wet-brained alcoholic. My brother, he's a full-blown alcoholic. My sister was an alcoholic. And I can see where it's very damaging. And it causes a lot of anger. I was disappointed in a lot of ways in my life.
Yes.
I got angered. I got mad at my mom, my dad. My mom was an embarrassment to my friends. I never had a friend. And I couldn't invite people into my house because they were subject to the embarrassment. And Celebrate Recovery has been my avenue of recovery. It's been a very thankful thing. My wife can swear by it that I'm a lot better than I ever used to be. And I still have a lot of room to grow. So I'm here to try and spread this recovery to you people or people in your life. I'm going to participate with Pastor John, and we're going to get into the prisons because there's going to be a lot of people in there dealing with anger. And I spent 12 hours in jail, and that gave me a lot of time to think about where my situation was in life. And you get to see a lot of things when you're in jail. And there was a lot of people in there with the same anger problems and alcoholism that I was dealing with. And when I went before the judge and pled guilty, that was the avenue, my start of healing. I was facing probably 2 years in jail because of domestic disturbance. And by the grace of God, that judge pardoned me or allowed me to go and be on probation. And it's been a struggle ever since, but it's better than it ever used to be. And so anyway, that's a condensed version. I could tell you a whole lot more about my life and how it affected my life, how my family affected my life. And so I'll just close it with thank God for what I have been exposed to with Celebrate Recovery. Amen. The gentleman that introduced me to it, you know, God puts people in your life that you're not even aware of. This gentleman brought me into Celebrate Recovery, and I became a leader in a group over in East Wenatchee, and then we moved back to Cleon, and I want to get a program started here. And with Ellie and Robert here, we're trying to get a program started in Cleon. And it's very successful. There's 28,000 churches with this very big, same program in it, and there's a lot of participation. And it's a lot of people such as yourself that in denial. They don't want to accept the fact that they may have a burden. As Jesus says, take my yoke. It's much lighter than the burden that you have on your shoulders now. And how many of us are sitting here saying, lying to ourselves, well, I don't have a problem. That's denial.
Right.
I said that too. My first wife, we went to therapy. And it was, I don't have a problem, it's everybody else. They're causing me to get mad. Okay? So anyway, I'll close it with that. Thank God for everything. I can only say to him, it's him that's helping me get recovered.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all. Thank you, buddy.
We're going to have his testimony in full later. So I want to keep this before the church. I want you to pray for Celebrate Recovery. I want you to come and support it periodically. Some of you have never been. You don't. I don't know what you're afraid of. We keep them in straitjackets. They want to hurt you. But come and visit Celebrate Recovery. You can go to the one in Cle Elum. You come to the one here and just see what's going on. You won't be going to small groups. And just come and see what the folks are going through. These are real issues that our churches are full of. And I grew up as a child of an alcoholic, and it scarred me. And I've never met such sweet, honest, wonderful people that I've met before in Celebrate Recovery. It's just amazing. I'm going to give my testimony. Ellie gave her testimony Friday night, and then again here. And I'm going to give my testimony sometime, and we're going to get Tim to do his again. So we're going to ask Tim to close us in prayer. I hope you see the purpose of why I brought this before you today. Be in prayer. This is one of the most, there are folks that we are reaching now at our church that we never reached before. And we're reaching them now. Let's keep doing this. Back it up. Support it. Pray for it. Get the word out. We've got brochures you can hand out. Don't just say, oh, that's nice, they're doing a ministry. It's our ministry.
Amen.
It's this church's ministry. So let's get it done. Tim, would you pray for the food, please?